We've been covering the OnePlus 5 a lot here on C4 eTech. In today's video, let's check out Oppo's OnePlus 5. Wait, what? I mean, Oppo's R11. The one that was announced way before the OnePlus 5. The one that kind of looks like a OnePlus 5, feels like a OnePlus 5, but really isn't a OnePlus 5. Yeah, that one. How does it hold up? Well, let's find out. But before we do, if this is your first time here or in case you're too far gone down the Oppo OnePlus rabbit hole, my name's Ash, this is C4 eTech, and you're watching our full review of the Oppo R11. Let's get started. So let's start with the build and design. Now, like I mentioned earlier, we've covered the OnePlus 5 extensively here on C4 eTech. And even if you are new, I'm sure you've seen a bucket load of OnePlus 5 coverage elsewhere. If you've seen the OnePlus 5, you've seen 99% of the R11. Given that Oppo is the parent company of OnePlus, the two share a lot in common. Hell, OnePlus 5s in India are even manufactured by Oppo. Anyway, here's the other 1%, the differences. Well, the overall footprint's quite similar. The spec sheet shows that the R11 is a little taller, wider and slimmer. In reality, it doesn't feel that way. Hell, you can even interchange the cases and that's how close they are. The R11 loses the alert slider, retains micro USB instead of Type-C in 2017, loses the dual tone dual LED flash, has more curved edge profile to make it feel even slimmer than it actually is, has marginally different placements and antenna line design. The battery capacity is also a little lesser at 3000 mAh, probably one of the reasons why Oppo has managed to get the phone's thickness to 6.8mm. It does, however, gain a 20 megapixel front-facing shooter instead of the 16 megapixel shooter from the OnePlus 5. So, given the similarities here, the Oppo R11 shares the same pros and cons as the OnePlus 5 with regards to build. The build quality is excellent, the phone feels premium in hand, but I'm not a huge fan of the extremely iPhone-ish design. Another feature the Oppo R11 shares with the OnePlus 5 is the use of a 5.5-inch AMOLED display. Well, yeah, OnePlus does call the panel on the OnePlus 5 Optic AMOLED, which in reality means OnePlus have tweaked the color settings on it. That's it, it's just software. For all intents and purposes, both phones share the same display hardware. This is an excellent 1080p panel. About 400 pixels per inch, that's quite respectable for most things outside of VR. The viewing angles are excellent, the blacks are very black, contrast infinite given the AMOLED technology at play here. It also happens to be covered by 2.5D Gorilla Glass 5 for protection and gets bright enough so that you can easily read what's on it when using the R11 outdoors. The audio via the single downwards firing speaker was quite loud, cellular reception and call quality were great, absolutely no issues. Audio via the 3.5mm headphone jack was about acceptable. One thing worth mentioning is that the R11 does have support for memory expansion via microSD in the form of a hybrid slot. Now, while most of what we've seen so far with the R11 resembles what the OnePlus 5 has to offer, here's one of two major differences between the two. One, the chip underneath. The Oppo R11 is powered by the Snapdragon 660 chip. That's an octa-core setup with 4 powerful Cryo 260 cores based on Cortex-A73 and 4 power-efficient Cryo 260 cores based on Cortex-A53, coupled with an Adreno 512 GPU, 4 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of onboard storage. Now, while the Snapdragon 660 is definitely not as powerful as our 835, it is still an excellent upper mid-range chip. It is, after all, the follow-up to the stellar Snapdragon 652 So compared to these, the 660 is supposed to be bringing a 20% boost in CPU and 30% boost in GPU performance. And we've seen phones with the 652 run anything thrown at them. The R11 with the Snapdragon 660 keeps up the good work. Gaming performance was good. With day-to-day usage, we faced no performance hiccups. Here's the second major change. The R11 runs on Oppo's ColorOS 3.1, built on top of Android 7 Nougat. ColorOS is a highly skinned version of Android and doesn't have an app drawer. There's not a lot of bloat here. ColorOS does have its own set of tweaks, including a theme store. And this time around, you can enable a split screen option. Once toggled, you can long press the recent apps key to run 2 apps side by side, but most of Oppo's own first-party apps don't seem to support it yet. Other features include support for some gesture functionality with the screen off, drawing an O to launch the camera, V to turn the flashlight on or off. The fingerprint scanner can be used to lock apps or files, and that was quite handy. By the way, this fingerprint scanner is extremely fast and accurate. I'm guessing it's the same hardware as what's been used on the OnePlus 5. Overall, the user experience here on the R11 was great. There were no slowdowns, no lag. The 660 chip kept things chugging along quite nicely. Given that this chip is built on the 14nm manufacturing process, there were no heating issues and the R11 remained cool throughout, no matter if we were browsing or if we were playing games. Now, there is a 3000 mAh battery backing all this up, and the battery life was excellent too. With moderate usage, I was easily able to get through a day on a single charge. My daily usage kinda went like this. Loads of push notifications, obsessive checking of social media and YouTube comments, an hour or so of calls via Bluetooth, some mild gaming for about 30 minutes, music over Bluetooth again for a couple of hours, some streaming videos for about 15 minutes on some days, for about an hour on others. I used the R11 as my primary smartphone for about 8 days, and in this time I ended each of those days with anywhere between 20 to 30% juice left in the tank. That's about the same I got from the OnePlus 5 despite the R11 sporting a lower capacity battery. Now, in case you do run out of juice, there's support for VOC charging to get you back up real quick. The R11 goes from 0 to 50 in about 20 minutes and takes about an hour and a half to get fully charged. That's quite fast. With that, let's now talk about the USP of this device. The R11 uses the same dual camera setup as the OnePlus 5. We've got one regular 16 megapixel sensor with an f1.7 lens. That's the Sony IMX398 sensor. Then there's a 20 megapixel secondary IMX376 sensor with a f2.6 telephoto lens. So the R11 also happens to be able to get you 2x lossless zoom. The camera interface feels heavily inspired by iOS. You swipe to switch modes. The portrait mode is eerily like what we've seen on the OnePlus 5. There's also an export mode with all pro controls available. Under good light, both cameras excel. Images are sharp, have a ton of detail, natural colors with excellent contrast. The dynamic range is extremely good too. Software processing is on point. The portrait mode functions as intended. Oppo seems to have gotten the execution right here. Under low light, the f1.7 aperture helps. The images still manage to look good. Do note that the second camera doesn't work here. Since it has a f2.6 aperture, the R11 instead chooses to zoom in and crop using the primary sensor, similar to what other phones like the iPhone 7 Plus do. The R11 can also shoot 4K videos at 30 frames per second. The lack of optical image stabilization really hurts here. Unlike the OnePlus 5, this phone doesn't have EIS at 4K. The quality of the footage itself is great. Just like with still images, the footage has good detail, reproduces colors naturally, has excellent contrast with good dynamic range, and is let down only by the lack of OIS or any kind of stabilization. Well, you can zoom 2x while recording. The R11 again only crops and doesn't switch to the second camera. The 20 megapixel selfie camera excels at what it does. Hell, it even has a portrait mode and produces some excellent results. Selfies are one area where Oppo seems to be doing extremely well. So with that, let's now talk price. While we still don't have an update on if or when Oppo will bring this phone to India, but it is sold in China for 2,999 yuan, that's about 28,500 rupees or 450 US dollars. At this price, the R11 seems to be a strong offering from Oppo. It outdoes everything the F3 Plus did and does so at a lower price. Of course, the elephant in the room here is the fact that the OnePlus 5 does still offer much better value for your money. Now, barring the presence of micro SD and better selfie optics, the R11 doesn't really have anything over the OnePlus 5. But Oppo is not really pitting it against the OnePlus 5. It is predominantly aimed at markets like China, where stock Android doesn't really count for much, or if it launches in India, it would be sold predominantly offline. So that's it for my 2 cents on the R11. Do you agree with what I've had to say in this video? Let me know via the comments below. If you do want to pick an Oppo R11 up, I'll leave direct links in the description below. Use them if you want to help the channel out. So if you did hate this video, you know what to do. But if you did like it, turn that into a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button down below if you haven't already. If you've already subscribed, hit that bell icon to make sure you get notified each and every single time we upload a new video. And that's it. Thanks a lot for watching. Till next time, this here's Ash calling it like I see it. You guys have a great day. Bye-bye now.